Welcome to Lincoln Park Zoo. We are so happy you're here with us. Today on Stay Tuned to the Zoo, we are learning all about polar bears. We'll get the chance to learn about the two bears that call our zoo home. We'll even learn about how we care for them here at the zoo, and we'll get the chance to learn how you can observe the extremes of the Arctic just by observing a polar bear up close. Now, before we get started, I want you to take a second, pretend like you are in the Arctic environment, the home of wild-born polar bears. Close your eyes and use one word to describe it. Did anyone say cold? If so, you are 100% correct. The Arctic is cold and can be harsh. What many people don't realize, though, is there are seasons in the Arctic. In the summer season, especially at the southern end of the Arctic range, it can get to about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. But the winters are definitely harsher and more extreme. And in that Arctic ecosystem, temperatures can drop below zero by 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Polar bears have really incredible adaptations to survive and thrive in those cold scenarios. As you're observing Siku and Talini, the male and female polar bear here at Lincoln Park Zoo, you can see some of those extreme adaptations. One of the best adaptations they have for staying warm is that thick layer of fur on their body. As they're moving around, you'll see that their fur moves with them. What you can't see, though, is there are two layers of fur, an underfur and an outer layer. These two layers are going to help keep polar bears warm, but it also helps keep them dry in the Arctic ecosystem and definitely keeps these zoo-born bears here at Lincoln Park Zoo dry and warm as well. Polar bears also have a really thick layer of blubber underneath that skin and fur. And as Siku and Talini are walking around their home, you might see a little jiggle underneath, and that is the fat or blubber that they have. As zoo-born bears, Siku and Talini don't have as thick of a layer of blubber as their counterparts do in the wild. In the wild, polar bears need to have a 4.5-inch thick layer of blubber. To put that in perspective, if you hold out your hand and go where your thumb meets your hand all the way out to the end of your fingers, that's about 4.5 inches thick. That blubber is really important for polar bears and definitely insulates them in those cold temperatures. Another adaptation that polar bears have for staying nice and warm in that Arctic environment are really short extremities. Now, what I mean by that is they have really short ears and a really short tail. As you look at Siku and Talini behind me, you'll notice that compared to their body size, those extremities are so small. This is on purpose. Having really short ears and a really short tail are going to help them prevent losing heat from those extremities and keep their internal body temperature nice and warm. With the polar bears behind me, hopefully you can see their really large size. Polar bears are the largest predatory land mammal, and the males are definitely impressive compared to the females in size. The adult male Siku that lives here at Lincoln Park Zoo, on his back 2 feet, can stand about 8 to 10 feet tall and weighs close to 1,000 pounds. Their primary prey in that Arctic environment it's going to be seals. So polar bears have really beneficial adaptations to help them find and catch and hold on to those seals. As you look at Siku and Talini behind me, hopefully you're getting the chance to see that really long nose. My favorite thing to watch the polar bears do is stick that nose in the air and smell their environment here at the zoo. And in the wild, polar bears will use that sense of smell to smell for seals. They can even smell a seal underneath the sea ice and miles away. Now, once they find the seal, they definitely have to be able to catch it and hold on to it. It might be hard to see here today, but polar bears have really long, sharp canine teeth. They're also widely spaced, so when they do catch a seal, those teeth are going to help them hold onto it. Because seals provide that really thick layer of blubber, this blubber is going to be insulation for polar bears like we talked about, but it also provides them with enough fuel for their bodies. And in the Arctic, polar bears have to go days, weeks, or even months without food, especially if you're a female polar bear that might be going into denning season. So having that diet of blubber-rich seal is critical to making sure that those polar bears are staying safe in their Arctic environment. Don't worry, here at Lincoln Park Zoo, Siku and Tellini get fed every single day. So they don't rely on a diet of seal here, but we want to make sure they're getting food that has the same nutritional value. So spread out behind me today throughout their habitat is a small part of their diet, like produce, fruits and vegetables, but they're gonna get a lot of meat as well, like fish, ground meat, and other protein-rich items throughout their habitat. If you also use the word big to describe the Arctic, you're also correct. The Arctic is big and vast, and many different countries make up the Arctic ecosystem. The Arctic itself has 3 different habitats: a forest habitat, an icy tundra habitat, and the sea. Now, in the winter with those extreme cold temperatures, those seas turn to frozen sea ice. And this frozen sea ice is the platform that polar bears use to hunt their primary prey, those seals that we talked about. If you're wondering, how can a 1,000-pound animal walk on the sea ice without slipping in? Don't worry, polar bears have adaptations for that as well. As we watch Siku and Tellini move throughout their home, you've probably noticed those really big paws. These paws are about the size of a dinner plate. Let me show you, for example. This is an average size of a dinner plate, and it measures about 8 to 12 inches across, the same as a polar bear's paw. So these large, wide paws are going to help a polar bear spread out their body weight over a larger surface area to make sure that they are not going through the ice. If you've ever walked on the ice during the winter time, you've probably been slipping around, but polar bears have an adaptation to prevent that as well. Underneath their paw pads, they have bumps on them called papillae. These bumps are going to provide them some traction, similar to a snow tire or even your snow boots that you wear in winter. This, paired with their really long, sharp claws, are going to help them grip into the ice to make sure they're not slipping and sliding around. We've learned all about how polar bears are adapted for that Arctic ecosystem, and in fact, they dominate in the Arctic ecosystem. But it's important to know that the Arctic needs our help to stay the same. The Arctic is changing, and one of the biggest changes that we're seeing is less sea ice due to rising temperatures. You see, when humans burn fossil fuel like coal and oil for energy and transportation, we release excess amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And what this excess carbon dioxide is doing is creating a heat-trapping blanket around our Earth, causing temperatures to rise. Now, rising temperatures can have big impacts in the Arctic ecosystem. We all know what happens to ice when it gets warm. It melts, and that's what we're seeing with the sea ice in the Arctic environment. But don't worry, there are teams of scientists around the world working to make sure to keep that Arctic environment and polar bears safe. And Lincoln Park Zoo is partners with one of those amazing groups of scientists, a group called Polar Bears International. They are out in the Arctic studying polar bears and work to protect their Arctic home and keep polar bears healthy in this space. You and I, even though we're not scientists, can make choices and changes in our everyday life to benefit polar bears as well. Electricity and the energy that we use in our homes can actually add to that heat-trapping blanket. So if you think to yourself next time you're leaving a room, maybe I should turn off the lights and reduce my energy to make sure that I'm helping to keep that Arctic ecosystem healthy. It seems like a small thing to do, but for us living at home, it's a great opportunity for us to take action on behalf of polar bears. There's a lot of other choices you can make as well. That is just one of a long list. And if you want to learn more, you can go to our website at lpzoo.org and go to Take Action with Us. I hope you enjoyed getting the chance to see the 2 zoo-born polar bears here at Lincoln Park Zoo, Siku and Tellini, learning about how we care for them here at the zoo, and learning about how you can see the extremes of the Arctic by observing a polar bear up close. Thank you so much for joining us today for our chat. We just learned about the awesome adaptations polar bears have for surviving in the extremes of the Arctic. We're going to put our memory to the test and get Matt ready to go outside and be able to handle the winter temperatures today here in Chicago. Now remember, when it is cold and wet outside, it's really important that we stay warm and dry. Can you remember what polar bears have to keep them warm and dry in the Arctic? If you guessed thick fur, you are exactly right. Polar bears have 2 layers of fur, an underlayer and an outer layer that keeps them nice and warm and dry. What do you think we could use to keep Matt nice and warm today? Did you say a sweatshirt? Let's see what we have. This sweatshirt is nice and warm and will be a really excellent layer for Matt. Here you go. Great, Matt looks really nice and warm. Now we need a waterproof outer layer so he can handle the wet snow outside. Let's see what we have. These waterproof pants will be perfect for keeping his legs nice and dry. Here you go, Matt. Now we need to have a waterproof layer for the top half. Let's see what we have. Perfect, a nice long waterproof coat. Here you go. Perfect. Now remember, when there's a lot of snow and ice on the ground, it's really important to prepare your feet for their journey outside. Can you remember what polar bears have to help them walk on the snow and ice in the Arctic? If you guessed their paws, you are exactly correct. Polar bears have really wide paws, about the size of a dinner plate, to help them walk on the snow. And remember, they have incredible traction underneath to help them grip the ice so they're not slipping and sliding around. Let's see if we have some nice boots for Matt. Perfect. These boots are nice and wide and have an incredible layer of traction underneath, which will help Matt prevent from slipping on the ice. Here you go. Great. Now, it's important to remember in the winter time when the temperatures drop, it's usually really windy as well. So it's important to protect your extremities, like your hands and your head. Let's see what we have to protect Matt's hands. Perfect. These gloves are nice and thick, really warm on the inside and waterproof on the outside. Here you go. Last but not least, we just need to make sure that Matt's ears and head is protected so he's not losing heat out of them. Let's see what we have. Oh, this hat is nice and thick and really warm on the inside. Here you go. Perfect. I don't know about you, but I think Matt is perfectly ready to survive the extreme temperatures outside in winter in Chicago. All right, I think it looks like Matt is ready to survive in the cold Chicago. Are you ready, Matt? All right, see you later. As Matt heads outside to enjoy the cold winter temperatures, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed learning about those awesome adaptations polar bears have for the extremes of the Arctic, and I hope you enjoyed using those skills to get Matt ready. Thank you so much for joining us today on Stay Tuned to the Zoo. Make sure you subscribe below for new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday.